Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Seymour with the Optimal Response Initiative. And in this video, we are talking about emotions and the fact that they have different levels of intensity. So in the last section, you worked on identifying emotions, expanding your emotional vocabulary, your intel by looking up emotion words and synonym finders, and really expanding, what is the emotion that you're feeling in this moment? Because if we only have 5 emotions to choose from, that's not empowering us very much with being able to gather intel about what are we feeling. Are we mad or are we confused? Are we sad or are we hopeless and depressed? Are we lonely or feeling rejected? So we need acceptance. How do we move towards optimal on the ORI continuum response line and meet the need for acceptance first with self, remember, in optimal healthy ways? So we are expanding emotional vocabulary continually in the Optimal Response Initiative. And then chapter 11 is talking about the fact that emotions have different levels of intensity, which you already picked up on really when looking up emotion words in a synonym finder and, expanding that emotional vocabulary. Chapter 11, I have you essentially put those emotions, those synonyms in order from least intense to highest intensity. And on the last video where I had my own chart that I made for myself of those primary emotions for me, I chose the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and humbleness and self-control. So I looked up all of those in a synonym finder, expanded my emotional vocabulary on those primary emotions. And then I looked up even the opposites of those and then looked up those opposite emotion words in a synonym finder to continue to expand my emotional vocabulary. And then I even put it in order on my chart for myself, kind of from least intense to highest intensity. And if you understand that emotions have different levels of intensity, essentially looking at emotions from a lower speed to a higher speed of intensity, then that is the point of chapter 11, that emotions have different levels of intensity. I am going to share my screen just so I can make sure I highlight some of these main points. And I want to start this with a quote from Jim Rohn, and it's that life is not just the passing of time. Life is the collection of experiences and their intensity. I like that because I had the word intensity in it. So that is a quote by Jim Rohn. And then we're talking about in chapter 11, emotions have different levels of intensity. So just showing here from irritated, mad, somewhere in the middle, all the way to rage, emotions have different levels of intensity. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So one of the additional benefits of increasing our emotional vocabulary is that you can recognize that emotions do have different levels of intensities, and we know that what goes up must come down. And since emotions intensify in an upward motion over time, we know that they will decrease in a downward motion over time as well. And so this is good news. Emotions don't just go from 90 in a split second, from nothing to 90 in a split second. It may seem that way, but it's not the case. It is not that we are doing just fine and then in 1 second we are full of rage. The truth is that you probably experience irritation, confusion, sadness, perplexity, agitation, mad, pissed, anger, resentment, exhaustion, anger, mad, pissed, helpless, more pissed, and then a total loss of patience, and then rage, for example. It built up and it built up and it built up and it built up. And before the emotions got out of control, thoughts got out of control, which fueled the emotional spin out. Thoughts like, I can't take one more second of this. I'm going to blow. I'm going to smack this person or thing. I hope not. I've had it. I'm done. I'm over it. All of these kind of thoughts may have occurred. And then the emotions intensified, and then the less than optimal behavior followed. So thoughts, emotions, behavior in that order. One of the reasons that I've integrated teaching about the stress response and teaching you how to do diaphragmatic breathing is so that you can learn how to slow yourself down, first physically and then cognitively, your thoughts, then emotionally, and then behaviorally. If you're not aware of the fact that your stress response is ramping up in your body, it will kick you in the tail or gut or both and cause you to feel like a victim to it. So learning how to diaphragmatically breathe helps you slow down your body, slow down your thoughts, so that you can begin to think about what you were thinking about, which is metacognition, so that you can do something about it, which is empowerment. A personal example, personally, I have learned to notice a pain in my right side that tells me I'm getting irritated. Right after the irritation follows confusion. I absolutely hate to be confused. Being confused makes me feel scared. I feel the fear in my chest usually. The fear taunts me into believing that maybe I'm stupid. Then I start swallowing a lot and feel like I'm choking, kind of. And then I feel like I'm stupid even more. And I'll never be able to figure out what I need to figure out to do what I need to do. This usually makes me feel angry and reminds me of the time when I was 7 and I had just come out of a coma. I began second grade in the hospital school in Seattle Children's Hospital. The physician told the teacher not to expect much from me because he said that I was now retarded because of my brain injury. Now, this was back in the 80s, so this is how they spoke back then. Do you see how closely tied our emotions and thoughts are? From the example I shared, do you see how confusion and fear is underneath my anger? By learning how to diaphragmatically breathe, I have learned to recognize where in my body the stress response starts and how it travels. Once I recognize this and learned about this, I begin doing the work that I've learned to do, which I am now sharing with you in this program. I've had some patients over my career who maybe notice a pain in their foot when they're angry or scared. Others notice tightness in their chest and throat. Others recognize their breathing changes from normal to fast pressured. One person told me they feel tingling in their hands, and still some feel sick or notice their vision changes, or they get a shooting pain in their temple, maybe. Whatever you notice physically, the key is to begin to notice where in your body you feel something and what it feels like. These serve as early warning signals for you to begin to do the work you need to do to manage your breathing, manage your thoughts, manage your emotions, and your behaviors. Ultimately, it is so that you can learn what you need to do to meet your needs rather than fall victim to your circumstances or other people, waiting on them to do for you what only you can do for yourself anyway. ORI is about learning how to be empowered via your breathing, your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors so that you can experience your full potential and the optimal life that is yours to claim. Here's a cool fact about the body. It can only withstand high intensity emotions for about 45 to 50 minutes. So an emotional intensity will naturally start to decrease after 45 to 50 minutes, regardless if the situation is still going on in actual time or if you are thinking about something distressing. After 45 to 50 minutes, the body says, hey man, I need a break from this. Let's decrease this intensity. And like an airplane lands, so too does the emotional intensity decrease. Now, sure, it may ramp up again, especially if the stressor is still going on, or if you keep thinking and thinking and thinking in unhealthy thinking patterns. But in 45 to 50 minutes, again, it will decrease in intensity. The great thing about the body is that it can't stay at 100 miles per hour in emotional intensity forever. It would blow a gasket. Every 45 to 50 minutes, it needs to drop in intensity, even if it is only down to 60 or 70 from 100. That's still better than being between 80 to 100 as far as the level of intensity. And here's an example. Here's a warning about, it's making me move my hair, a warning about spiders. So this is going to be some brief kind of optimal exposure work. If you can hear a story about spiders, that's going to increase your distress tolerance of dealing with spiders, because spiders are not disappearing in this world, are they? So real life example, spiders in my hair. It was a late Friday night. I was driving from South Carolina to Georgia, 3.5 hours. I kept feeling something in my hair. I thought I used too much hairspray and that my hair kept getting stuck to the fabric on the back of my headrest or on my car ceiling. After about 15 minutes of this, I had had enough. I ruffled up my hair and flipped it forward. Then I saw them, two big old brown spiders were flying towards the windshield like two airborne rangers conducting an assault operation. At first, I thought, surely those aren't spiders inside my car. But then I saw them begin to scale up the windshield, and their bodies were not on the top of the glass where I could see their non-existent spider stomachs. Their bodies were upside down, racing quickly to the top of the ceiling above my head. It all happened in 1.1 seconds, too. Immediately, I began to sweat profusely. I could barely breathe, and it was pitch dark out. I was on Highway 20. There were no exits to safely pull over. Sure, I was packing a gun, but I was not pulling over and giving an ill-intended person an opportunity to receive one of my bullets, if necessary, of course. I called my husband and freaked out. He told me to get a hold of myself and calm down. He said, "They are only spiders. Come on, get a grip. You better not wreck." Then I got mad at him for being so insensitive. Eventually, however, I realized that I was not going to pull over and possibly get killed, so I had to keep driving with the spiders on the ceiling of my car and possibly back in my hair. Since this is the decision I made, I decided I'd better make the best of it and do what I tell everyone else to do. Give it 45 to 50 minutes. Your fight, flight, or freeze response will calm down on its own, but you'll have to help it calm down with your breathing and your thoughts. Your body has to calm down somewhat because it will need to conserve energy, even if the situation is still going on. So I rolled down every window, hoping the wind might blow them out, and I did my breathing, and I got a hold of my thoughts. I began reciting, "This stinks and is uncomfortable, but I can manage it, one breath at a time." I was amazed. After about 20 minutes, I felt a little more at rest, even though I was still in the spider situation. Then after about 40 minutes, I quit pouring sweat. By 60 minutes, I was nearly breathing normal and not even freaking out anymore. I thought, this is amazing. I can't believe I'm doing this. And it stinks, but I'm managing it with my breathing. It is true that after about 40 or 45 to 50 minutes, the body kind of calms down in intensity to conserve energy. That's absolutely fascinating. This stuff actually works. So just so you know, I personally had to rely on this cool little fact about the body and test out the thing I haven't had to test out to this degree in quite a while. I knew that it worked. I was reminded that yes, it works. And here's a little note about the added danger of unattended depression. Often when people are clinically depressed or anxious or both, they get so tired from this pattern that they decide sleeping would be better. Besides, they are exhausted from all the intensity anyway. The downfall of this, of course, is that if one decides to sleep, they sleep some more, and they sleep some more, and they sleep some more. And depression and anxiety increases all the more, followed by self-loathing and blame. But let's get back to our intensity discussion. If the intensity never decreased, literally, blood pressure would probably get so high that the person would have a heart attack or a stroke. And sometimes this is what happens if the emotional intensity has been chronically intensely up and down for years and years. The cardiovascular system, the veins and the capillaries, get worn out from so much high pressure blood flow, charging through them like a fire hose. This is why stress is the leading cause of disease states, specifically cardiovascular disease. You see why it is so important to learn how to respond optimally? Let's take what you did in the emotional words listed from chapter 10, and let's expand upon those. So take each emotional word and their synonyms and rewrite them in order, if the order that you believe is least intense to highest intensity. So on page 158 of the Optimal Response Initiative civilian version, you're going to take your emotional word and all the synonyms and write them in order from least to greatest. So for rage, I have listed irritated, confused, sad, perplexed, agitated, mad, pissed, anger, resentment, exhaustion, pissed, no patience, rage. So from 0 all the way to 100, this is the least intense to highest intensity. Then you're going to take your emotional words and do the same. So all 5 emotional words, you're going to list them and all their synonyms in order from lowest intensity to highest intensity. And a bonus self-reflection optimal response initiative for growth is that you can literally you can literally take this one to the bank. So I want to encourage you to do the same for optimal emotional words. So the ones that you want to experience more, because it's just as important to manage the enjoyable emotions as it is to manage the painful ones. In fact, I would say that one's self-awareness guard can be down when experiencing enjoyable emotions, celebratory emotions. And this can lead to impulsivity that leads to less than optimal decisions. As one of your biggest fans in life, I want to ensure that to recognize, as one of your biggest fans in life, I want to ensure that you recognize that ORI is about responding optimally to the painful as well as the enjoyable emotional states in life. I'm serious. Think of a time in your life that you were celebrating and you impulsively ate the extra less than optimal food, drank the less than optimal number of glasses of alcohol, spent the extra money on the thing that felt like you needed it, only later to find that it was an impulsive buy that you felt serious buyer's remorse about when you got home. So we want to pay attention to all emotions. We want to expand our emotional vocabulary, whether they're enjoyable or not so enjoyable. And just because they're enjoyable doesn't mean that they can't lead us to worst on the ORI continuum response line. So the painful emotions, the enjoyable emotions, we want to expand our emotional vocabulary so we have more intel about what we might need, and various synonyms to kind of consider which one are we honing in on. What is that emotion telling us that we need, and how can we move towards optimal on the ORI continuum response line, no matter what the emotion is? So I give an example of an emotional word of peace, and then I list some synonyms: privacy, quiet, tranquil, calm, silence, reconciliation, unity, accord, conciliation, solitude, and peace. So wanting to tap into what are these potential emotions telling me that I might need, and how can I move towards optimal on the ORI continuum response line regarding these emotions as well. So you have space to do that for yourself, and then you have some self-reflection for growth. Through the hard work you've put over in the past week, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about the emotions that you're prone to experience? What really sticks out to you regarding how emotions have different levels of intensity? So do some self-reflection on page 161. Enjoy that process, and I'll enjoy hearing from you about all that you're learning about emotions, about gathering the intel, expanding your emotional vocabulary, and also recognizing that yes, emotions do have different levels of intensity. And the sooner we get a hold of our emotions and are self-aware about what we are feeling at lower intensities, the sooner we can be empowered and figure out what we need and then move towards optimal on the ORI continuum response line, meeting those needs in healthy ways in our day-to-day life for thriving. All right, so I will see you soon. I enjoyed going through emotions have different levels of intensity, and I'm excited to hear from you about how this is impacting you and how you are more optimally responding to yourself, others, and situations in your day-to-day life. I'll see you soon.